It's time for the news.
More than 105 million pilgrims have arrived to begin the rituals of Hajj, announcing their ihram at the start of one of the most significant stages of the pilgrimage known as the Day of Tarwiyah. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has received at his residence in Bari, Italy, where he is participating in the G7 summit, the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto. And the United Nations has said that more than half of Gaza's crop fields and arable land essential to food security have been drastically reduced in density and health as a result of the devastating Zionist aggression on the coastal strip that has been going on since October 7, 2023. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First in our news, more than 1.5 million pilgrims have arrived to begin the rituals of Hajj, announcing their ihram at the start of one of the most significant stages of the pilgrimage or Hajj, known as the Day of Tarwiyah. According to the Saudi press agency, pilgrims began gathering in large numbers early in the morning, embarking on the first step of the Hajj journey that will later lead them to the stand-in at Arafat. Pilgrims will spend the coming day in Mina preparing to move towards Mount Arafat on the 9th day of Dhu al-Hijjah, known as the Great Stand-in. They will proceed from Arafat at night to Muzdalifah to collect pebbles in preparation for the stoning of the Jamarat during the day or during the days of Tashriq ritual symbolizing the rejection of Satan. In addition to hundreds of thousands of Saudi pilgrims, this year's Hajj will take place from June 14 to 19. This year's pilgrimage is exceptional, with Saudi government agencies relying on smart applications to manage pilgrims and crowd control. A special program will be broadcast at the end of this news bulletin on Hajj, so stay with us till the end. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has received at his residence in Bari, Italy, where he is participating in the G7 summit, the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto. The President of the Republic arrived Thursday afternoon in Bari, Italy, to participate in the G7 summit, which is being held in the Italian city from June 13 to 15. The participation of the President of the Republic in this summit comes at the invitation of the President of the Italian Council, Ms. Giorgia Meloni. And the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, received earlier the French President Emmanuel Macron at his residence in Masseria, San Francisco, or in Masseria in Bari, Italy. The President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, arrived in Bari on Thursday afternoon to take part in the G7 summit, which is being held from 13 to 15 June. The President of the Republic is attending the summit at the invitation of the President of the Italian Council, Giorgia Meloni. President Tebboune is due to deliver a speech to the leaders attending the summit, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and the heads of several international, regional, and continental bodies and organizations, in which he will address a number of issues of interest to the African continent and the Mediterranean region. On the sidelines of his participation in the summit, the President of the Republic will be meeting with a number of major world leaders. The G7 summit, which is being held in Italy, is examining a number of issues, including the situation in the Gaza Strip, migration, development in Africa, climate change, and artificial intelligence. The Minister of Interior, Local Assemblies and Country Planning, Brahim Arad, has stressed in Sidi Bel Abbas in Western Algeria the need to step up efforts and work with firmness to thwart all attempts of drug trafficking, to face up to campaigns aimed at undermining the country's security and stability by introducing large quantities of these harmful substances. At the inauguration of the headquarters of the Mobile Brigade of the Judicial Police and the headquarters of the Multi-Purpose Customs Brigade in the Ben Badis sub-governorship, as part of his inspection visit to the province of Sidi Bel Abbas, the minister stressed the importance of the effective role played by the Algerian Customs Services in coordination with units of the National People's Army, the National Police, and the Gendarmerie to counter the war waged against Algeria by smuggling into the country all kinds of drugs and psychotropic substances targeting young people in an attempt to undermine the stability of the country. In this connection, he stressed the need to work with determination and relentlessly by coordinating efforts, notably in border areas. Still with the domestic file, the National Liberation Front (FLN) party has called on the President of the Republic, Ms. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to stand for re-election on September 7 in recognition of the major achievements made by Algeria under his leadership and as part of the ongoing process of reform and development. Speaking at the opening of the third session of the party's Central Committee, the Secretary General of the FLN, Abdelkarim Ben Barak, called on behalf of the members of the Central Committee and all the party's militants on the President of the Republic to stand in the presidential election on September 7 in recognition of the merit and wisdom of his choices and of the important achievements achieved or made by Algeria under his far-sighted leadership and in the framework of the pursuit of the progress of the process of reform, edification and development of Algeria. Shifting to the Middle East now, where the United Nations has said that more than half of Gaza's crop fields and arable land essential to food security have been drastically reduced in density and health as a result of the devastating Zionist aggression on the coastal strip that has been waging or going on since October 7, 2023. Said Boughazi has more details in this report.
With the help of satellite images, the United Nations Satellite Center UNOSAT and the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization FAO found that 57% of Gaza's permanent cropland and arable land essential for food security showed a significant decline in their area, density and health. In May 2024, the health and density of crops in Gaza showed a marked decline compared to the average of the previous 7 seasons, according to UNOSAT. This deterioration is attributed to conflict-related activities including grazing, heavy vehicle movements and shelling, the source added. According to UNOSAT, this drop corresponds to a 30% increase in the amount of damaged agricultural land since its last analysis was published in April. In addition to the damage caused to crop fields and orchards, greenhouses in Gaza also suffered significant damage, UNOSAT said. Gaza has around 151 square kilometers of agricultural land, representing around 41% of the territory of the coastal enclave, according to UNOSAT data.
Meanwhile, 3 Palestinian women and a child were martyred on Thursday night in violent raids by the Zionist air forces, which targeted homes in residential areas of Gaza City. According to the Wafa news agency, the attacks by the Zionist occupation targeted a house near Haidar Square in the west of the Gaza Strip, resulting in the martyrdom of 3 Palestinian women while a child was killed in another airstrike in the city. In addition, the agency said Zionist warplanes carried out 2 bombardments to the southeast of the Al Zaytun neighborhood in eastern Gaza City and another strike at the entrance of the Bureij refugee camp in central Gaza. On Thursday night, 6 Palestinians were killed in a Zionist air raid that targeted neighborhoods in the city of Gaza, while 3 young Palestinians were killed in clashes with Zionist occupation forces in Jenin in the occupied West Bank. And the Palestinian Journalists Union has announced that 84 incidents have been documented where Israeli occupation forces have stolen journalists' personal properties since the beginning of the aggression on the Palestinian people in October 2023. Saad Boughazi has more details.
A report by the Union's Freedom Committee revealed that since the start of the Zionist aggression, 50 incidents of seizing journalists' cell phones have been documented, particularly during home raids and arrests. Additionally, 8 laptops were confiscated or destroyed, 8 Palestinian printing presses were targeted, and 3 drones used for journalistic photography were taken by Zionist occupation soldiers. Other stolen items included work cables, microphones, protective vests, while numerous cameras were smashed. Commenting on the report, Mohammed Al-Laham, head of the Freedom Committee, highlighted that these incidents occurred solely in the West Bank. He noted that the scale of theft and destruction in the Gaza Strip is significantly higher, with about 86 media office headquarters bombed and destroyed, making it difficult to account for all damages due to the ongoing bombardment and aggression. El-Laham condemned the actions of the occupation forces, stating that what the Zionists call confiscation is simply theft, occurring both day and night. He criticized the lack of legal documentation or proof of confiscation, likening the actions to those of criminal gangs.
Still in the Middle East, file the General Secretariat of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, along with the League of Arab States and the African Union, have taken part in a consultative meeting to discuss the conceptual paper on the trilateral coordination mechanism for Palestine. The meeting took place on June 12, 2024, at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. The trilateral coordination mechanism aims to enhance cooperation and consultation among the three organizations to support the Palestinian cause on the international level. It seeks to strengthen the connection and solidarity of nations with the rights of the Palestinian people in line with the resolutions of Arab, Islamic, and African summits on this matter. And the Brazilian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mauro Vieira, has said that the UN Security Council's resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip is a ray of hope. Security Council's resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip is a glimmer of hope that could hasten an end to the Zionist aggression. In a statement to the media on Thursday, following a meeting with his Turkish counterpart in Ankara, the Brazilian minister also stressed the importance of alleviating the sufferings of Palestinians in the region and providing the humanitarian aid they need, reiterating Brazil's support for the proposal for a two-state solution in accordance with the 1967 borders. He added Brazil supported any solution that could bring about positive progress, expressing his hope that the decision taken by the Security Council will lead to peace and security in the region. And a Lebanese woman was killed and several others were injured in a Zionist airstrike last night on the village of Janata in the Tyre district, southern Lebanon. The national news agency reported that airstrike targeted a house in the village of Janata, resulting in the murder of a woman and the injury of at least 7 other citizens. In a briefing to the Security Council, the Director of Operations and Advocacy at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, Idem Wasornu, said the developments in the banking system have potentially catastrophic ramifications in Yemen, worsening the already dire humanitarian situation there. Let's listen to her.
These developments have potentially catastrophic ramifications. They threaten to further fragment and weaken Yemen's already struggling economy. They undermine the private sector's ability to conduct the financial transactions necessary for the import of food and other essential goods, further limiting the availability of basic commodities and, of course, driving up prices. And above all, they are disrupting the flow of remittances on which so many families in Yemen depend. All these factors will likely deepen poverty, worsen food insecurity and malnutrition, and increase reliance on humanitarian assistance. These measures also have serious repercussions for humanitarian relief operations. The increasingly volatile banking environment has worsened an existing liquidity crisis, making it difficult for humanitarian organizations to pay staff salaries or to procure and pay for the many services they rely on for these operations, these life-saving operations.
And that was the Director of Operations and Advocacy at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, Idem Wasornu. And still in Yemen, the permanent representative of Yemen to the United Nations, Abdullah Ali Fadl al-Sa'idi, has called on the international community to shoulder their responsibility following the detention of United Nations diplomatic and NGO staff by the Houthi rebels in Yemen.
To serve their political agenda and harness humanitarian aid to serve their security and military agenda, especially at a time when more than 18 million are in dire need humanitarian assistance. Government of Yemen call on the Security Council, international community, the special envoy to Yemen, relevant human rights organizations to shoulder their responsibility and to shoulder their legal and moral responsibility to strongly and clearly condemn these criminal practices as flagrant violations of international law and conventions.
To the Western Sahara file now, the Sahrawi journalist, political activist, human rights defender and trade unionist Mohamed Mayara has been on a lecture tour in Australia since the beginning of June to make known the cause of the Sahrawi people and their struggle to exercise their right to self-determination, his family and friends said on Thursday. Organized by the Australian Western Sahara Association, Mayara's tour began with his participation in Adelaide in the Act 2 2024, a trade union movement aimed at strengthening solidarity through the struggle for justice, progress and improvement in the lives of workers. On Monday, Mohamed Mayara, co-founder and coordinator of the Sahrawi Collective and independent journalists, Equipe Media, whose aim is to document Moroccan repression against those working for a free Western Sahara, took part in an exhibition of Sahrawi works of art in Melbourne. Prosecuted, arrested and tortured by the Moroccan occupation forces, Mayara continues to receive regular death threats. Despite persecution and intimidation, Mohamed Mayara is committed to the rights of the Sahrawi people. His commitment is deeply rooted in his personal history, having witnessed the pain of disappearances and persecution within his family. New fighting broke out on Thursday between Congolese government forces and M23 rebels in the Kanyabayonga region in North Kivu in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, according to local civil society sources. The same source added that the fighting was concentrated in Bulindi, Muowa and Kakoa near Batalongla, around 10 kilometers from the city of Kanyabayonga. Heavy gunfire was heard as far away as Kanyabayonga Center, causing further displacement of people who had just returned to the town. These clashes come after 3 days of relative calm observed on almost all the battle lines in Kanyabayonga. And finally, in 2023, children living in conflict situations experienced violence at unbearable levels, according to a new report published by the UN Secretary General on Children and Armed Conflict. Jamal Slimani has more details in this report.
Children have been recruited and used, including at the front lines, attacked in their homes, abducted on their way to schools. Their schools were military used and their doctors targeted, and the dreadful list goes on. The evolving nature, complexity and intensification of armed conflict, as well as the use of explosive weapons in populated areas, has led to a shocking increase in grave violations against children in 2023. Talking to the press, Virginia Gamba, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict, said the following.
In 2023, violence against children in armed conflict reached extreme levels, with a shocking 21% increase in grave violations vis-à-vis prior years. Utilizing the monitoring and reporting mechanism and its approved guidelines, UN personnel verified 32,990 grave violations against children in 25 CAC situations and one regional arrangement covering the Lake Chad Basin region.
The UN Secretary-General Annual Report on Children in Armed Conflict has included for the first time information on Haiti and Niger, Ms. Gamba added.
Situations in the CAC report where substantial increase in grave violations were verified include a rise of over 155% violations over prior years in the conflict in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory, notably the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank. While in Sudan, we witnessed a staggering 480% increase in grave violations against children in highly populated spaces such as in Khartoum and in the Darfur region. Furthermore, Myanmar's situation deteriorated, with a 123% rise in grave violations across the country, but with spikes in the Rakhine region. Unfortunately, grave violations also increased in the following situations: in Colombia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Haiti, Lebanon, Nigeria, and Somalia.
Armed groups were principally responsible for the abduction, the recruitment and use, and sexual violence against children. The use of explosive weapons continued to have a disastrous impact, killing and maiming children and restraining the delivery of humanitarian aid.
And as I said from the outset of the news bulletin, time now for a special program devoted to Hajj, or pilgrimage, that is taking place today. And with this, we'll come to the end of it. I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin in English. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International, and bye-bye for time being. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah.
The fifth pillar of Islam is the pilgrimage to Mecca and its surroundings, known as Hajj. All Muslims are obligated to make Hajj once in their lifetimes if they can afford it and are otherwise able to do so. The Hajj is made from the 8th to the 12th of the Islamic month of Dhul Hijjah. Muslims travel from all over the world to perform Hajj. The rituals are themselves simple, but the amount of walking necessary, the hot climate and the crowds make the Hajj a rigorous exercise in faith. Still, between 2 and 3 million people perform Hajj every year, and millions more yearn to do so. To perform the Hajj, pilgrims enter a state of consecration known as Ihram. In this state, they may not clip their nails, cut or pluck any hair, or have any sort of sexual contact. Male pilgrims wear special clothes consisting of 2 seamless strips of cloth, one covering the back and shoulders, the other covering from the waist to the knees. Female pilgrims can wear ordinary clothing that covers everything but the face and hands. The rituals of Hajj date back to the time of Prophet Abraham and commemorate his willingness to sacrifice his only son Ismail, peace be upon them. During the days of Hajj, the pilgrims attempt to forget all but their most basic worldly needs and to focus their attention and devotion on Allah alone. Upon arriving in Mecca, the pilgrims first circumambulate the Kaaba 7 times in a ritual known as Tawaf. This ritual reminds the pilgrims that Allah should be the focus and center of their lives. The next ritual is Sa'i, which is walking back and forth 7 times between the hillocks named Safa and Marwa. This commemorates the search for water made by Hajar when Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, left her and her infant son Ismail, peace be upon him, in the desert. On Dhul Hijjah 8th, pilgrims head to Mina, where they spend the day supplicating Allah. Early the next morning, they go to Arafah or Arafat. They spend the day supplicating Allah and begging for His forgiveness. Many stand on the Mount of Mercy to supplicate, though this is not necessary. When the sun sets on the day of Arafat, the pilgrims' sins are forgiven. After sunset, the pilgrims move on to Muzdalifah, where they spend the night and collect pebbles to be used in the next ritual. The next morning, Dhul Hijjah 10th, is the day of sacrifice. Most pilgrims slaughter a sheep or goat, and the meat is distributed to the poor. Muslims who are not on Hajj also slaughter that day, which is known as Eid al-Adha. The ritual commemorates Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son Ismail, peace be upon them both, and Allah's provision of a ram as a substitute sacrifice. But before slaughtering, the pilgrims go to throw pebbles at the stone pillars known as al-Jamarat. This ritual commemorates Abraham's stoning of Satan when the latter tried to tempt him to disobey Allah. After this, the pilgrims cut or shave their hair. Women cut off only a small amount and return to Mecca to repeat Tawaf and Sa'i. They sleep at Mina and repeat the stoning of the pillars on the next 2 days. A final Tawaf before leaving Mecca completes the Hajj. Many pilgrims also go to Medina before or after Hajj in order to pray in the Prophet's mosque and visit his grave, although this visit to Medina is not necessary. The above is only a summary. There is some variation in the performance of Hajj, depending on whether the individual pilgrim chooses to also perform Umrah, often known as a lesser pilgrimage, beforehand, and whether this will be while in one prolonged state of Ihram or 2 separate ones for Umrah and Hajj.
مع إذاعة الجزائر الدولية لن تفوتكم لحظة واحدة